as you in the audience know on this show, Grand Theft World is funded by the audience. And when memberships don't cover the cost, then it's funded out of my pocket. But we don't do 15 ad reads per episode. We're not like whoring ourselves out all over the place. And I'm not saying the people in the next story are. This is not a foreshadowing of the Tenet story whatsoever. What I see in the Tenet story is it's not really a honey pot so much as a money pot. And when you've got people that make a lot of money and you just offer them more money, some of them just say, yeah, I'll take $100,000 a week to make videos. I just realized that could be taken out of context. We didn't take that money, but like some of the people in these clips, people that you see on YouTube, they took the money. Some of them got a lot of money for very little work. Smart people would be like, a little bit too good to be true. It's a lot of money. You sure you don't want to spread this around to more people? So, long story short, somebody took $10 million, put it in the pot, and sent it out to conservative YouTube producers with a large footprint. And I think Crowder has commented that he was offered it and it seemed shady, so he didn't take it. But apparently, several other people who have been on Grand Theft World clips that you're about to see have been in there, and I was glad to see when Kim Iverson brought it to the table. I'm like, well, at least she's not in the story, because like everyone else covering it was like in the story. Benny Johnson was in the story. Tim Pool's in the story. Lauren Chen was in the story. So anyway, we're going to get perspectives from Paul Joseph Watson, from Kim Iverson, and from Jeremy at the Quartering. Three people who are substantial YouTubers who didn't take the money can talk about the other substantial YouTubers who did take the money, allegedly. They're all innocent until proven guilty. Indicted just means government wants to do some stuff, doesn't mean they're guilty. So keep your head straight, stay frosty. Let's learn about the Tenet scandal. And this is not about a Christopher Nolan red-blue timeline going back and forth, although it could be. Let's check it out.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and a Department of Justice unveiling a new indictment against, with some apparent link, now left-wing media, of course, is stretching and twisting and turning, to Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Tucker Carlson, as well as Tenet Media. This article is being shared by the losers at Midas Touch, and it's absolutely bonkers. You know, Tucker, Tim, Benny Johnson, Lauren Southern, the usual suspects, the Russian assets. We knew them to be all along. I mean, I don't really understand how these people, you know, why can't I get any of the Russia bucks? I like vodka. I like vodka. Where's all my Russia bucks? I don't get any of this. As far as I know, I can be fairly certain that, I don't know Tucker, but, you know, Benny and Lauren and Tim, I am sure, are completely clean in all of this, but that isn't stopping the left from pushing out all sorts of articles about them, and it isn't stopping me from reminding you there is just hours left in my 25% off site-wide sale in stock, summer flavor, and we have literally everything in whole bean and ground. The freshest coffee you'll find online anywhere. So here is the article on the garbage left-wing outlet, Midas Touch, or Midas News. Now, they think putting the word news on it makes it credible, but they appear to be just doing the best they can to smear these people. Two Russian nationals employed by state-controlled media outlet, RT, are charged with conspiring to break U.S. laws by secretly funding and directing pro-Russian content on social media platforms. Tim Pool and Benny Johnson pushing a lot of pro-Russia content. Oh, I remember when Tucker Carlson went grocery shopping and was like, wow, look how clean their stores are. Is that what you consider pro-Russia content? Now, the Department of Justice has unsealed an indictment charging two Russian nationals. I'm not even going to try. Well, let me go. Konstantin Kalishnikov and Elena Afantseva with conspiring to violate Foreign Agents Registration Act and money laundering in a scheme to covertly influence U.S. audiences. Both Kalishnikov and Afanasyev remain at large. The indictment reveals that the two were employees of RT. By the way, Rumble is blocked in Russia, so, there's that. They played pivotal roles in funneling nearly $10 million to a Tennessee-based online content creation company. Referred in court documents as Company One. Now, I don't know, this is very wild. I know that Luke and I give the folks at Tenet a lot of trouble. They call them the billionaire boys, but I actually don't think that they are connected. Anyway, on its remarks. The indictment reveals that the two had funneled nearly $10 million into a Tennessee-based online content creation company, referred to in a court documents as Company One. The content company, unbeknownst to its viewers, was funded and directed by RT to produce pro-Russian videos aimed at American social media users. This company is believed to be Tenet Media, who touts right-wing hosts Lauren Southern, Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, and others. Now, as far as I know, Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, Lauren Southern, they do not own this company, and they would have no idea about how they get financed. Tenet Media did burst onto the scene not that long after in my opinion, far superior news outlet, the Publica. Have you read the Publica? We're 100% fan funded. We don't get any big checks from Mo Russia, but that's only a joke. But check out thepublica.com. Check out our social media. Our X account is always trending, doing lots of interesting things. Anyway, it's believed to be, now that it is not proved. The indictment remarks on its website, U.S. company describes itself as a network of heterodox commentators that focuses on Western political and cultural issues. The phrase matches the Tenet slogan, which appears on their website. The indictment further states that the two, founder and founder two, also worked together to deceive two U.S. online commentators who respectively have 2.4 and 1.3 million subscribers. Founder 1 and Founder 2 contracted Commentator 1 and Commentator 2 to produce videos using Commentator 1 and Commentator 2's own names and leveraging their existence for license and publication by Company 1. That's a lot of legalese. That basically says, hey, they paid Benny Johnson and Tim Pool to make pro-Russia videos. I have never seen Tim Pool make a pro-Russia video. I know that Tim Pool has 100,000 people paying him $10 a month on timcast.com. I find it completely without merit that Tim Pool would take money to make a video of any type. He wouldn't even take money. I said, hey, you want to promote Coffee Brand Coffee? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm just going to start my own inferior coffee company. But that's neither here nor there. The subscriber counts mentioned in the indictments match the number of YouTube subscribers for the accounts of Benny Johnson and Tim Pool, respectively. Again, not proof. Lots of people have those number of subscribers. There are probably thousands of people with 2.4 million subscribers. Russia has long sought to exploit our free and open society by secretly influencing public opinion in the United States, said Attorney General Merrick Garland. The Department of Justice will not tolerate these covert efforts by foreign adversaries to manipulate democracy. The DOJ alleges that between October 2023 and August 2024, RT transferred nearly $10 million to a company they say is Tenet through a network of shell companies in Turkey, the UAE, and Mauritius. The funds were allegedly used to produce and distribute content designed to sow discord among Americans, amplifying domestic divisions on issues like immigration, inflation, and U.S. foreign policy. At no point have they made any connection between Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Tucker, or Lauren Southern, or even Tenet knowingly taking money to produce Russian-related assets. In fact, this article has in my opinion, provided a significant amount of reasonable doubt, saying, well, they passed all this through a bunch of shell companies. I mean, how would they know? I mean, I take ads for, various products, and how would I know if some shell company through another shell company? Nobody has time. No reasonable person can do that amount of research. Since its launch in November 2023, Company One, believed to be Tenet Media, has posted nearly 2,000 videos across platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and X, garnering 16 million views. Now, just for what I can say, as of right now, Tenet Media has not said anything about it. Their Twitter remains completely, they're just posting as normal. The DOJ notes that while the content appeared to offer commentary on domestic issues, that it was aligned with the Russian government's goal of weakening U.S. opposition to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So, if I don't support the what's going on in Ukraine, which I don't, okay, does that mean I'm a Russian asset? If I say, I understand maybe why Russia thinks the way they do, does that make me a Russian asset? So then if I have any opinion that slightly agrees with somebody else, and then they buy an ad on my video, am I suddenly a Russian asset? Now, the two individuals who funneled the money in, maybe they're criminals, I don't know. But certainly to say Tim Pool and all these other people, that's wild. The defendants are also accused of deceiving two US-based online commentators with large followings into producing content. So they deceived them. So they're saying they got tricked.
All right, guys, let's break down this scandal involving Lauren Chen and her media company, Tenet. They are accused of using millions of Russian dollars, millions of dollars given by the Russians to pay some high-profile conservative commentators. To be clear, Lauren Chen has not been indicted yet. Her husband has not been indicted. The two people who have been indicted so far, the reason why we know about this scandal is because the DOJ released an indictment that the descriptions in the indictment were pretty clear that this is Lauren Chen, her husband, their company, and various different, the very few, they don't have, it's not a large company, the very few YouTube commentators that they have working for them. We're going to break down this scandal. First of all, is this just Russiagate 2.0 or 3.0 or 4. I don't even know what round of Russiagate are we on right now. Is this just another Russiagate scandal? Secondly, we're going to answer the question, is what she did bad? Did she do anything wrong? Is this a pro-Israel attack? Lauren Chen had been vocal against Israel. She'd been very much sympathetic towards the plight of the Palestinians. So is this just an attack from the pro-Israel front, trying to get rid of a commentator, trying to take them down, trying to smear them? Or is this a left-wing attack, which would kind of go into that Russiagate, being another Russiagate? So we're going to break all of that down. But let's get into the facts first. Okay, so the indictment rolls out. The only two names listed in the indictment at the moment are these two Russians, fairly young Russians, in their late 20s, early 30s, who work for RT. They, according to the indictment, ran a scheme where, in order to evade the sanctions and the restrictions on RT and on Russian media, they created a slew of shell companies and funneled money through those shell companies to Lauren Chen and her husband. And they then directed them to go and find commentators that would fit the Russian, like whatever the propaganda or whatever the messaging that that's the implication. The implication is that they hired Lauren to go and find commentators that would deliver a pro-Russian message. That's not explicitly stated in the indictment. I don't know if they have evidence that they were specifically saying, we want you to go and find commentators that we could then groom to spew Russian propaganda. I doubt it was done like that, but that's the implication in the indictment. And the implication in the indictment, the accusation, not even just an implication, the accusation in the indictment is that Lauren Chen knew the money was coming from Russians and that she helped cover that up and that she then baited these commentators in. And the implication in the indictment is that these commentators did not know that the money was coming from Russia, but that Lauren Chen and her husband covered it up and they worked alongside these Russians in this scheme to make a lot of money and bring in these commentators. Okay, So let me just show you who Lauren Chen is. You might be familiar with her. So she is a popular conservative commentator. She also worked for RT for a period of time, writing some articles for them. She did work up until today she worked for Blaze Media, which was Glenn Beck's media empire. She also was with TP USA, Turning Point USA, which is a conservative group. They also the Blaze announced that they fired her today from this indictment. The indictment is quite damning, I'm not going to lie. And it also looks like Turning Point USA has distanced themselves from her as well. When you try to find her on their website, you get a 404 error. She's not there. Okay. I got to say now, and the commentators that are involved in this. So Tenet Media was a small media company, just barely started up a couple of years ago. Apparently funded, the money, where they got their money was from this, maybe this was their sole source of income, is what the indictment seems to indicate, that they didn't really have any other income other than this $10 million that came from the Russians. Let's talk about who the talent. So they, on the roster, it's a very small roster of talent. Dave Rubin is on the roster, received money from this project. Benny Johnson, another one. Both Dave Rubin and Benny Johnson have about 2.5 million subscribers on YouTube. Lauren Southern, another YouTuber, she's got about 770,000 subscribers on YouTube. Tim Pool is another commentator that's caught up in this. He's got about 1.5 million YouTube subscribers. So there's a couple of others. There's Taylor Hansen and also Matt Christensen. They're smaller creators, but Tenet Media is a small media company, small number of creators, tons of money to be able to pay these creators. In fact, in the indictment, it looked like that one of the creators, I'm not sure who it was getting about $5 million for the year, demanded $4 to $5 million to make videos for Tenet Media, videos that only on average got 8,000 views. So this was not a money. It's such bad business. You know how much money you would make off of 8,000 views? Like $8, I mean, so to pay millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars for these videos is kind of an absurd thing. But one of the commentators was claiming, was demanding, according to the indictment, $3 to $4 million. Another one was demanding about $2 million. They were all getting paid a lot of money in order to put out this information that these Russians had hired them to put out. And it's very suspicious. The government, just to be clear, the commentators look to be free and clear of this. That's what they're saying. We don't really know, but the commentators like Tim Pool and Benny Johnson are pretty much coming out and saying, look, we're victims in this. We didn't know where the money was coming from. We're giving voluntary interviews to the FBI. We didn't know. So it's not our fault. Like we were just doing a job. We just got hired to do a job and we didn't know where the money was coming from. As of right now, Lauren Chen has not been indicted. But Lauren Chen and her husband, I think we're probably going to see some indictments unless they have done a deal and they're striking a deal or something. I think we could probably expect that Lauren Chen and her husband are going to be indicted and they're going to be facing prison time for this because the indictment is pretty damning. Let's go over some of it. So this is what they're saying happened. They're saying RT, formerly known as Russia Today, is a state-controlled media outlet funded and directed by the government of Russia. After Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022, RT was sanctioned, dropped by distributors, and ultimately forced to cease formal operations in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom and European Union. In response, RT created, in the words of its editor-in-chief, an entire empire of covert projects designed to shape public opinion in Western audiences. One of RT's covert projects, as described herein, is its funding and direction of a Tennessee-based online content creation company, which is Tenet Media. So that's pretty damning right there, saying that, okay, so Russia was trying to skirt the sanctions. They were trying to skirt the fact that they weren't able to broadcast in the United States. So they created this sort of clandestine empire of covert projects. And that means that there's probably more to come. First of all, that means that with the government saying that one of RT's covert projects is described in this indictment, just one of them. So that means they're investigating more and that we might see more people being indicted or more entities being indicted for having taken money from the Russians. Now, let me just stop for just a second and talk about whether or not taking money from the Russians in this covert way, using a slew of shell companies, they hid the money because they couldn't get it. Lauren Chen and her husband couldn't get it directly from the Russians directly, so they had to create about 7 or 8 different shell companies in order to funnel the money around. But the indictment shows over and over and over again that Lauren Chen and her husband knew 100% that they were taking money from the Russians. They knew this. There was even a fictional character that was created by these 2 Russian journalists. We'll just call them Russian journalists, the ones that were paying, or Russian, I guess you could call them Russian assets. You could call them Russian agents. We'll just say they're working for RT. RT is a news organization, so we're going to call them Russian journalists. Okay. Maybe they were working on behest of the Russian government to go and find American journalists to pay in order to spread more of their messages or whatever that might be. But we'll just label them as that for now to give them the benefit of the doubt. So according to this indictment, Lauren knew that these Russian journalists were being paid by Russia. The money was coming from Russia. They knew this. They created the shell accounts. The Russian journalists created a fictional person. When the commentators started questioning where Tenet Media was getting their money, I mean, look, if you're a creator and you're like, yeah, I demand, if you want me to make videos for your company, you have to pay me like an absurd amount of money, $3, $4, $5 million, which is insane to even request. You're requesting that. They're then saying, we want to know where the money comes from. You're going to give me that? Like, you're serious? So then we want to know where the money's coming from. So apparently these 2 Russians created a fictional person, including a press kit on that fictional billionaire who was the backer of Tenet Media, when Lauren Chen and her husband knew very well that it was actually Russia. And let me just say, I think so the FARA Act, they had to register under the FARA Act. They're being charged, the 2 Russians in this indictment are being charged with not registering under FARA. They are Russian nationals. It doesn't matter. The FARA Act is specific to if you are a foreign government or taking foreign money and you are spreading messages in the United States. Your target audience could be congressional leaders because you're lobbying. Your target audience could be American housewives because you're a media company. As long as if you're taking money from a foreign government and you're spreading messages, whether it be lobbying messages or news media or journalism messages, you have to register under the FARA Act. That's what is required of you, no matter if you're an American or not. They're being indicted for not registering under FARA. Lauren Chen, again, has not been indicted yet. Her husband has not been indicted yet. And if they are, if they will be, I'm not sure what those charges will be. But the other charges against these Russians are the fact that they used shell companies in order to move this money around. So they're being charged also with money laundering. Now let's talk about the FARA Act for a second. And I've railed against this on this show numerous times. And I'm going to again. The FARA Act, I have a specific problem with forcing journalists. I'm not talking about these. I think what happened here, let me be clear, I think what happened here was really wrong. And this is infuriating. I'm pissed off about this case. I'm pissed off because so many of us have had to fight the claims that we're spreading misinformation from foreign, that we're paid by Russia, we're paid by Iran, or we're paid by Assad. We've had to fight this our entire careers. So it's really infuriating when someone actually did it because it makes us all look bad. Suddenly, everybody could point the finger at all of us and say, yeah, well, what about Tenet Media and Dave Rubin and Tim Pool and Lauren Chen and all of them? And they took all that Russian money, even though most of the creators still, we don't know fully, but as of right now, what we understand is that these creators had no idea the money was coming from Russia. But if they knew, then that would be an even bigger scandal and absolutely outrageous. But the fact that Lauren Chen knew, and then she was bringing these creators in and giving them Russian money, so that then you couldn't even fend off the accusation that you've been paid by Russia or paid by Assad or paid by Iran or paid by Hamas or whatever, right? All the accusations that are often lobbed against us. It's infuriating that this comes out and and if these allegations end up being true, which we'll find out, this has to go to a court of law. These aren't just accusations from mainstream media. This is an indictment. This will go to court. We'll find out. And this is absolutely infuriating that somebody actually went and took money when the rest of us are battling this narrative that we're taking money from foreign actors. Let me just be clear. I don't take any money. My money sources are incredibly transparent. I make my money from YouTube AdSense. I make my money from my locals community, and I'm a Rumble exclusive show. So Rumble gives me an amount of money in order to produce this show daily for you. And Rumble's a Canadian company. Well, and that's it. And it's transparent. I'm on the Rumble platform. You know exactly what I'm doing and what's going on here. And actually, I think Rumble's now also an American. I'm not really sure if they're technically both, maybe Canadian and American. I have an issue with forcing journalists to register under FARA. All of the people that work for RT have to register. A lot of the people that work for the Chinese outlets have to register. I think that is hypocritical and ridiculous. Why would an RT journalist need to register under the FARA Act when I see they're on RT? I see the logo. I know it means Russia Today. I'm not an idiot. If I watch BBC, I know it's British news. If I'm watching, some Israeli, I know it's Israeli news. I mean, those are obvious. It's coming from obvious sources. These journalists are working for these outlets. I don't think it's fair to call them Russian state-backed media and label them on Twitter like they were for a long time. And if you're not going to do the same thing to the British-backed, the British media affiliations or those that are Canadian or Australian, if you're only going to slap the label on a few and it's arbitrary, that to me is a problem. It should be consistent. Either you make everybody working for a foreign outlet, for a foreign government, taking money from a foreign government. Now, Rumble does not take money from the United States government or the Canadian government. They're maybe a Canadian or an American company, but they're not taking money from the government. But even if you were an outlet taking money from the government, it needs to be consistent where everybody has to register under FARA, whether it's for the Brits or for the Iranians or for the Russians, it doesn't matter, or nobody needs to register if the funding sources are clear.
Massive drama as a DOJ indictment alleges Tenet Media was funded by Russia as part of an election meddling campaign, and that top right-wing influencers were seemingly unwittingly paid vast amounts of cash to shill Kremlin talking points. Looks like they didn't know where the money was coming from, but the founder of the company, Lauren Chen, did. Allegedly, one clue could have been their point of contact being Konstantin Kalashnikov, who worked for the Kremlin-funded RT. Yeah, a bit of a red flag. And then one of the founders googling time in Moscow when a request for payment wasn't answered. Influencers were told the money man was some fictitious Belgian investor named Edward Georgian, who had no social media presence whatsoever. Bit dodgy. But to me, one of the most shocking aspects of Russia's alleged Tenet Media election meddling campaign was how utterly awful it was. A supposed propaganda psyop to help Trump, yet the founder Lauren Chen was telling her followers not to vote for Trump. Although the indictment lists one example where the Russians told Tenet to make a video blaming the US for a terror attack in Moscow claimed by ISIS, the vast majority of the videos had nothing to do with Russia or Ukraine. Most of them were about culture war stuff. The opinions expressed were the same kind of thing these influencers had been saying for years beforehand anyway, and they've since come out and made clear that no one told them what to say. But all this big money, all these big names, and yet in most cases, even after a year of sustained funding and promotion, their YouTube views remained in the low thousands. And the Russians themselves allegedly complained that the operation was largely a flop and the influencers were just using it to promote themselves. $10 million for that? What a waste of money. Another jaw-dropping revelation was the kind of money some of these influencers were allegedly being paid. Tim Pool, $100,000 a week for one podcast. Dave Rubin, $400,000 a month for 4 videos a week, which barely got over 1,000 views, and which consisted of him laughing at people for saying dumb things on the internet. $400,000 a month for that, and some of you lot get annoyed at me for doing ad reads. And speaking of which, this video is sponsored by InVideo AI. With InVideo AI, you can turn any content or idea into a publish-ready video instantly. Let me quickly walk you through how VoiceOver changes the intro to make it more creative. You can then change any scene. Think of the amount of time and money you'd save with that feature alone.
Cela peut sembler être un incident isolé.
It would cost you hundreds of dollars if sourced individually. Just go to the link down in the plus different countries. Please check it out by using the link in the description box down below. In a separate legal action, DOJ prosecutors seized 32 Russian-controlled internet domains, some of which had laughably fake social media accounts mimicking CNN and the BBC, with one amassing a grand total of 7 followers. Yeah, great job, guys. If this was one of Russia's primary methods of interfering in the election to help Trump, they made a pretty terrible job of it. And remember, only Russia interferes in foreign elections. The UK, the United States and Israel would never dream of doing such a thing. Most of the influencers involved in Tenet issued statements asserting that they'd been duped and that the FBI is actually treating them as victims in the case.
The company never disclosed to the influencers or to their millions of followers its ties to RT and the Russian government.
Which makes sense, but others have questioned their judgment for not sufficiently interrogating where these mysterious vast amounts of cash were coming from. Seb Gorka says he was approached by Tenet, but soon backed out because when he asked about the source of the funding, he was given names of people who had no internet footprint, like one Edward Gregorian, or who had zero media connections, I mean none. It just didn't add up. We have not seen an adversary attempt to influence an American election to this degree ever before, said Frank Figliuzzi, a former FBI assistant director. Really, the biggest election interference attempt ever. Dave Rubin talking about donating a testicle to a trans man. Tenet Media founders Lauren Chen and Liam Donovan were raided when the indictment dropped and had their electronic devices seized, all based on the contention that none of this was registered under FARA, the federal law that requires agents of foreign countries to register their activities. And apparently no one at Tenet Media had any idea they were even being investigated. The feds must have been working on this for quite a while, begging the question why it's all happening now, 2 months before the election, and not earlier, which would have stopped the so-called election meddling campaign in its tracks. The indictment suggests the feds knew since at least June, when the Russian handlers began posting content directly on the Tenet platform themselves. One disgruntled employee still had access to Tenet's X account, though, labeling the company traitors to America. YouTube responded by deleting Tenet Media's entire channel, which some might say is understandable, but then they also wiped Lauren Chen's entire personal YouTube presence, including hundreds of videos from years before she even took the Tenet money, based on an indictment which is an allegation. No charges have been filed yet, and she hasn't even been convicted of anything, with some media reports asserting that she probably won't face any charges at all. So they can destroy your entire lifetime's work based on accusations alone. Great precedent there. A lot of us thought this whole Tenet Media thing was well dodgy when it was launched. Didn't really know who was behind it, didn't know how they got all those big names on board from the beginning, but I don't think anyone anticipated quite how dodgy it would turn out to be. Now, of course, this provides the regime and the legacy media with the perfect narrative. Trump's top MAGA influencers are all pro-Russian traitors, despite the other day Putin himself half-jokingly endorsing Kamala Harris.
If we can name a favorite candidate, it used to be Joe Biden, but now he is not participating in the election campaign, and he recommended all his allies to support Ms. Harris, so that is what we are going to do.
Expect Harris to seize on it during next week's debate. Anti-narrative commentators telling you the media lies must be Kremlin stooges. Right-wingers talking about divisive issues within the United States caused by leftism must be Kremlin stooges. People complaining about inflation under the Biden administration must be Kremlin stooges. People bemoaning the negative consequences of mass immigration must be Kremlin stooges.
We have all seen it for several years. There are people who are deliberately or knowingly or unknowingly promoting Russian propaganda.
The entire Russian collusion narrative is back in a big way. Feels like 2016 all over again. Suffice to say, I'll keep talking about all of those issues. Not because I'm being bankrolled by Vladimir Putin, but because they're true.
I don't know what's more disturbing. Dave Rubin getting 400 grand for making videos, 4 videos a week or whatever, or the thumbnails and the testicles and all the other stuff that I had to see during that video. Anyway, Scott, I'm sure you weren't scarred by that.
No, it's all just shocking. I thought that was really funny at the end. I didn't catch that. I feel like that's a great Putin troll where he's just trolling. He's like, yeah, we love Biden. Yeah, we love Kamala. Like, that's got to be a troll. Because, like, you know, if Trump gets in there, like all the fighting will stop, right? Everything will go back to normal, right? Allegedly, I don't know. But if they get
Allegedly.
Kamala in, then it's going to be just another. Maybe they're all just in on it. But yeah, so it's really funny about the whole Russian thing. It's like my first thought is, okay, yeah, now do Israel, right? Like all the Israel funding, and then it's like, okay, now do China. Whatever happened to the whole like Joe Biden, Hunter Biden getting like all this money from China? Like, did we just forget about that? Like,
Well, he
is that?
just got tax evasion. So
Well, I mean, yeah, but like, you know, so we're just not even gonna do that anymore. We're not gonna go look into that. And
I
yeah.
guess
See,
the
it's just
Ukraine
this.
biolabs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just
Well, my theory
bio
holds up.
milieu and what was the Rosemont Partners or what was his?
Rosemont Seneca, that whole bullshit.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, my theory stands correct, where it's just you just get dragged in front of Congress, you get your tongue lashing, they yell at you a little bit, they ask you some hard questions, and then you just say, yeah, I'll get back to you on that, and then you walk out the door and you're fine. In 6 months, it all goes away. Totally fine. No problem.
Oh, you know what? I am going to find that clip. I was just thinking, I saw this clip. Burmis has a morning show and he interviewed an author who worked in the CIA and was a lawyer and wrote a book. And I was like, what's this all about? And you guys got to hear this. You got to hear just like this, I guess, the state of people on the inside. Let me see if I can find that.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's so this guy, he graduates law school. He goes directly into working for CIA in their law department, and he's witness to a bunch of the crooked trials and lawfare and stuff like that. I have to go to my history over here. I'm working on different equipment, so it's not as easy to find everything. But I watched it this morning, so I should be able to find it. There was also, I watched the MH370 while I was driving between two cities. It was Clayton on Redacted, and I was really incredulous about the whole thing because the story ends with the things making the plane disappear. But by the time you get to that point in the story, and the fact that the one guy who would have leaked those footages got like put in prison for espionage, he could have thought he's leaking alien stuff, and they're like, dude, that's Lockheed Martin stuff. You're going to prison. So I have to look. We don't have time to play the redacted interview, and so I'll give honorable mention there. And where's that Jason Burmis show? It was like from JFK to 9/11 was in the title. So we'll find it. We'll find it. It's not the next block. It's not the next block anyway. I'll be able to find it. I'll just go to Burmis's channel. All right. So to keep the show on the road, we have a Trump assassin whistleblower from the United States Secret Service. That's going to be in this next block. But before we can get to that, we have to hear a little bit about conspiracies, because we're getting into the realm where there might be something going on that's more than just incompetence, right? And what are the various layers and levels of conspiracy, and what does it mean when you have too many contradictions, too many coincidences, and too many secrets? Here, I did find that interview. I think it means that you might have organized crime at the highest levels, working within agencies of our government. And that might have been going on since like World War II. It's been going on a long time. Operation Underworld. Look, this is me trying to see around my microphone stand so I can copy paste. All right, cool. So we're going to go to this block. I'll finish up. I'll find the Burmis clip. I finished finding the Burmis clip here.
I got it in the production chat there. I think I found it. We're good.
Thank you, Scott. That's so kind of you. Because every now and then, especially when I'm not working in my usual setup, I need a little help sometimes with the production. All right, so we are going first to the dearly departed George Carlin, and we're only going to get about halfway through this clip, so we don't need the whole clip. But he's going to make some points about conspiracies that might tie into the next clip. Let's take it. Take it.
Well, Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky, those people aren't on TV because they have intellect and they're dissenters, and the limits of debate in this country are set before the debate begins. These people will not be included. The debate will take place between these two poles, and we'll have them on Ted Koppel, and it's an argument between sames. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just little variations. The people who are outside are quickly marginalized. They're made to be either subversive, made out to be either subversive or kooks. This is the word.
Well, in other words,
he's a kook.
Yeah, and
you have to give him credit for one thing. You have to give him credit. They're out in the open now. They're out in the open now. They're not even trying to conceal it anymore. The owners of the country they got their election. They said, we're going to get this election. We put you people in that court for a reason.
Right,
now's
back
the time
to
to pay
earth
us.
for you now.
Yeah, forget all that stupid. Will you? They're out in the open. They're openly driving the bus, and we're all in the back.
There is no national conspiracy to buy elections and control America. Now talk about back to earth. That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem that we have, is that people make these kind of irrational statements. Unfortunately, I don't challenge the facts that you present, that those backgrounds are there. What I challenge is the idea that there's some kind of conspiracy about
now
this.
I get to talk.
What we haven't had, let me just make this quick point. What we haven't had, not as a result of a conspiracy, but because...
You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge. These people went to the same universities and fraternities. They're on the same boards of directors. They're in the same country clubs. They have like interests. They don't need to call a meeting. They know what's good for them, and they're getting it. And there used to be 7 oil companies. There are now 3. It will soon be 2. The things that matter in this country have been reduced in choice. There are 2 political parties. There are a handful of insurance companies. There are about 6 or 7 information things. But if you want a bagel, there are 23 flavors, because you have the illusion. You have the illusion of choice. Right. You don't get the real important choice. There's no freedom of choice. Having the oil companies and the corporations and the boards of directors tell us what we can do.
You are not required to buy an SUV.
Business should run
things. You are not required to run your electricity. You're not required. There are a number of things that you have control over.
How can you run a home without electricity?
What's that?
How can you run your home without electricity?
I figured out when I got my bill back in February that was 3 times the size. I went to the master block and knocked off a number of those items because I didn't want to have to pay the electricity.
I don't like orthodoxy of the left any more than I like orthodoxy of the right. The right-wing Christians are trying to control your behavior. They're trying to control the behavior of other people. The left-wing academics are trying to control the language and behavior of people. I don't like anyone trying to control and dictate to me from an orthodox standpoint. So you'll always have censorship. You'll always have attempts at silencing or altering the way other people speak and think. That's the important thing. See, if you can change people's language, you can change the way they think, because you think in words. So that's the dangerous part. After they clean up the obscenities and the profanity, then the next thing they'll want to clean up is these dangerous political thoughts. These people who have these dangerous thoughts. It's just it's an attempt to control others, and we have to be alert. That's all. Tell the truth. Don't be bullshitting people. Like I say, there's enough bullshit as it is. There's enough bullshit as it is. In fact, there's just enough. Did you know that? There's just enough bullshit to hold things together in this country. Bullshit is the glue that binds us as a nation. Where would we be without our safe, familiar American bullshit? Land of the free, home of the brave, the American dream. All men are equal, justice is blind, the press is free, your vote counts. Business is honest, the good guys win, the police are on your side, God is watching you, your standard of living will never decline, and everything is going to be just fine. The official national bullshit story. I call it the American okey doke. That's what they do with that kind of stuff. They put it in the heads of kids. They pound it in there because they know kids are too young to be able to mount a sophisticated argument against.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. We've got a new whistleblower, and we're finding out more and more information on just how a 20-something-year-old literal shut-in with no political affiliations and, various encrypted apps and this, that, and the other thing, was able to single-handedly defeat local law enforcement, Secret Service, and Department of Homeland Security on one fateful day in Butler, Pennsylvania. and where the world was literally 1 centimeter away from a Gallagher type performance, watching a watermelon, turn into many smaller pieces of watermelon on live television. There's a new whistleblower now that claims that they were woefully underprepared. I think pretty much everyone knew that. But the real question is, how do we take this? People are wondering, well, there are many people out there that believe that this was simply let to happen, that you don't see some dork walking around with a rangefinder and just let them chill. Some people believe it was let to happen. Some believe that it was made to happen. And I'm right here. I'm going to stay reporting on it. So let's go to this new whistleblower and what they had to say with Jesse Waters. Also, by the way, today's the day. Going for 10,000 followers on Tailgates for Trump. It's linked in the description below. We're going to make getting Trump elected in November fun. We're going to have parties, all sorts of stuff. So sign up, follow us on X or Truth Social, and then get your email address in here. We've got something like 3,500 people signed up to host or attend parties already. Get your real email address in, click join the movement, then check your email and confirm on the Trump attempt on Trump's life. Most of the agents who were there at the rally were not, in fact, Secret Service agents. In fact, Homeland Security agents, most of those Homeland Security agents were, the only training that they had received was an online webinar. An online webinar was all the training they had to protect Donald Trump's life. The former and current most important political candidate in the United States. Even if you disagree, you could say at least they're tied with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. You should be protecting them far more than a simple webinar. Listen to this.
What I've heard tonight, Jesse, is that most of the agents who were there at that rally in Butler were not Secret Service agents. They were, in fact, Homeland Security agents. And get this, most of those Homeland Security agents, the only training that they received was an online webinar, a 2-hour online webinar. And I'm told that about half the time, the sound to the webinar didn't even work.
I mean, you're probably thinking like, this can't be real. This can't possibly be real. This is like a cartoon. I assure you, this is a real report and a real video. I mean, the fact that the online webinar that they've had these people attend didn't even work is maybe the most pathetic. I want to say hilarious, but it feels so bad to say it's funny because it's not funny. It's like, let's find a situation where we can put the least trained people around the most important political individual on the planet. And then maybe something will happen. Maybe something. I mean, I think that you would be welcome. I think that I would understand why people might feel that way.
So think about this. The president of the United States, former president of the United States, Donald Trump, is sent out on stage. Most of the people there aren't trained. They're not qualified. They only got a webinar training, and even that didn't work. It is absolutely outrageous.
You're saying, and if we're to believe that.
If we go to some of the articles here, most agents guarding Trump during the attempt on his life were Homeland Security personnel who took a 2-hour webinar. It's like, hey, what's the absolute bare minimum we can do so that we can CYA, cover your rear end kind of thing, CYRE, that, we tried to do the best we could. Senator Josh Hawley says he's been informed by whistleblowers that most of the agents assigned to protect Donald Trump during the attempt on his life in Butler, PA, were Homeland Security personnel who had minimal protective training. Instead of having dozens of Secret Service agents on his detail for the July 13th rally, Trump was mostly guarded by Homeland Security agents which, by the way, I don't know, Homeland Security agents may be very well trained. They may be as well trained as anyone else. That part isn't an immediate red flag to me. The fact that the only training they had gotten was a 2-hour webinar in which one half of it didn't even work, that's a little more concerning. A 2-hour online webinar, and I'm told that half the time the sound of the webinar didn't even work. So think about this. The former president of the United States is
a 2-hour webinar, and half the time the webinar didn't even work. You know, I think we could do better than that. If you guys want to up your skills so that you're more competent than the Secret Service people who watch 2-hour webinars, or even the Homeland Security people who watch a 2-hour webinar, over here on getautonomy.info, after you read through, if you're interested, before you can schedule a call, there's going to be an intermediary step. Right now, you can click this button, you can schedule a call. We are going to have a primer course, which is really just a webinar for autonomy to provide transparency, to set expectations so that people have their questions answered, and that everyone is coming in with fully informed, full consent. They know what's going on. They know they want to get into learning and breaking out of their status quo. So again, if you want to be more competent than the people watching 2.5-hour PowerPoint videos that don't even work over there at the Secret Service to guard the former president, you know, we do need more competent people in this country. So if you want to be competent, get yourself over to getautonomy.info. And again, not an official sponsor of this show, but every now and then we got to make the show go. And sometimes I got to dip into my pocket. That's where the pocket money comes from. It's from teaching adults how to get their skills on. So you too should learn how to make your offer to the market. So when you got to dip into your pocket, it's not finite like paycheck mentality. You can just go ask and get more no's from the market, because with a number of no's comes a number of yeses. So every now and then you can help people out. It's not for everybody. Not everyone wants to grow. Not everyone wants to overcome challenges and get life skills. But for those who do, we're doing it in a couple weeks for season 12 of Autonomy. There we go. All right. So without further ado, Scott, do you have any comments on that clip before we move forward?
Let's see here. I did actually. Okay. So
PowerPoint presentation. I mean, I didn't think they could go lower than that, but that's a hell of a qualifier to be able to protect the president of the United States.
Yep. I mean, it just goes to show you again, man. Okay. So I was gonna say this. So, my buddy Alex Strenger, I don't know if you know him, familiar with him. He's actually been making some waves. He's been doing a lot of the culture jamming stuff you've been seeing lately. He's the guy that was at the Democratic rally remember that? It was like a couple weeks ago. He was at the Democratic National Convention.
The guy that I thought was Danny Polishchuk, or one of those guys.
Well, he was the guy that like tricked the BBC. Like they thought that he was like they thought that he was like a genuine like guy. Yeah. So that was him. And then he just confronted Nancy Pelosi this last week. And oh shit, what was my point in all that?
I thought it was Ryan Long at the DNC.
No, it wasn't Ryan Long. It's Alex Strenger. And actually yep. And he drives a pedicab, they call it, down in Austin, where he like drives people around with on the bike to like when they're coming home from the nightclubs and everything. And he's got a big unjected advertisement on the back of his pedicab. So he's a friend of ours for sure. But I forgot what my point was with that. Something to do with anyway.
That's a danger of doing a show in the middle of the night.
I know, dude.
Getting ready for their Monday morning, and we're scooping all the news agencies who will later this week report on things we talked about tonight.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, so he goes and confronts Nancy Pelosi this last week, and her little Secret Service squad, her personal protection squad, was all over him, dude. Like they looked more trained than the Trump people. I guess that was the first thing that came to my mind. Is like I was talking to him earlier. I texted him earlier. I was like, "Good job, dude." And like it seems like,
well, to their credit, they get more practice. Yeah, she gets more people of a negative variety around her than Trump does.
Exactly.
Trump's people, you could see how it'd be easy to be a little bit lackadaisical, because it's just like a big love fest there, and everyone's cool and chilled 99% of the time up till July 13th, 2024.
Yep. So it was just kind of funny. I mean, like the second, like at first he was doing his shtick where he's like pretending to be like super liberal guy. And then the second they get a whiff that there's something going on, they're like, all right, you're out of here. They're all over him.
My question for Alex, since you know him, is did he go through his rant and realize he didn't get kicked off yet, and then have to start like vamping and improving? Because I think he had a good like minute or two, but then they let him keep going. So then he was like reaching for examples and trying to be silly, but doing it live. I could tell. Yeah, maybe. Totally. But I'd like verification on my suspicion of his creative talent in that situation.
All right.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man.
No. You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.